Good morning, or good afternoon, wherever you may be, or good evening, or good night. This is Jen at JensArtyInclinations, a place to create, share, and play.
Hello everyone. Well, today is day 7 of DEPHEMEREMBER, and this is hosted by Luise Heinzl and also Barbara over at 49 Dragonflies. And what's the prompt today? It is magical creature. Goodness, I kept floating around with so many different ideas, and in the end, an image of a mermaid out of a beautifully illustrated book that I found in disrepair is what inspired me. So that's what I went with. All I'm doing here is playing about with the backgrounds. So this is just doing some watercolours, and I'm just, adding more colours, drying off, adding more colours over the top. Just really enjoying playing with some mainly blues, putting a little bit of a la carte. Oh, you know me, always get my wording confused. Yeah, putting some other colours, enjoying the layering. I haven't played with my watercolours for such a long time, so it was lovely to get them out again. And backgrounds are such a great way to play with any of your mediums, because you can be a little bit less precise, a little bit more free. It helps firstly free you up, and secondly, it actually helps you understand all your materials. So you get to actually play with all of your materials and your tools and get to play about, see how you can create different effects and techniques and really get into it without being too precious about it. So, yeah, there you go. I think I sped this up a bit, but gee, I'm painting for a long time here. Sorry about that. Right, what do I do next? Okay, adding more blue. So see how once you let it dry off, if you add some watercolour over the top, you can then get a deeper colour, remembering that as it dries, it will lighten up. But that's how you can get a little bit of texture even in your watercolours. That's obviously a little bit easier with acrylics because you'll get a lot more, what's the wording? Hue, colour, saturation. You'll get more saturation. All right, so then I'm mucking about and doing some splatters because, of course, I love my splatters, and that's where I'm using a little bit of different colour just to add a little bit. So a little bit of red, a little bit of green, because if you look at the water, it isn't just blue. You can actually see some other colours, you can see some reflections, but I'm trying to give the impression of this all being under the water. And purple for shadow. I often find, again, it's in the blue tones of the sea, but I often find purple is a fantastic colour for shadow. It just tends to work really well. And it's contrasting nicely here. All right, then with my actual illustration, what I did with her, there's my mermaid. And what I did with her was I fussy cut her out, and right now I'm putting over some ink, some embossing ink, so that I can put some embossing powder over, just to give it a bit of shine and really make that lift out as if it's glistening in the water. Well, that's my theory. Don't know if it looks like it in the end. And I decided afterwards that I preferred the water upside down. So there you go. You try some things and then you end up with something different. Now, this was a bit of scrap paper. I love the texture in it, and I thought it looked like some rocks or coral under the ocean that she could be sitting on. And then I'm adding some stamping over the background because I love doing stamps over the background. I feel it always adds a little bit of something. So just a few different stamps there. And I did some subtle light browns and yellows at first, and then I did some black just to help lift her a little bit as well. Some background stamps. Really just having a lovely time because I hadn't been stamping for a while, and so it's always fun to get out your stamps, your backgrounds and everything. Now next, I believe I'm going to use some black. So yeah, I've looked at her and gone, needs something. She's blending in a bit too much. So I started out with grey, like a dark hickory smoke, I believe it is, and then I went to the black soot. And these were just little leaves, but I thought that they looked like little seaweed leaves underneath the water, which is quite nice. Just enough to just give a little bit of contrast. So oftentimes when things don't work for me, it's because I haven't done the contrast enough. Alrighty, so there we are, popping our seaweed around. And so now I feel like she's a little bit clean against the busyness of the background and just making sure some seaweed comes out around her body. So next, we've got to find somewhere for her to sit. Oh, that's right, I also did some stenciling. So numbers, I thought, I don't have any numbers. I've got to have some numbers in this. So, bit of a 5, bit of a 2, little bit of script. Really kind of went to town so that the background looked a little bit more busy against the clean line of her body. So, again, helped it stand out, rounded the corners, because what I decided was that I would actually just do this as a huge journal card. Really simple. It's on a nice thick piece of art paper. And what I was doing with the edges there, by the way, was I was painting it, but I do end up inking it as well. So, using a little bit of this hand-dyed cheesecloth along with these torn pieces of textured paper, they were just some offcuts, and I felt like that gave that flowy effect of looking like it was under the water. So now I'm just sticking it all down, and I'm sticking it top down because I liked the placement and I didn't want to lose it. I always do in collage, so this is one of those tricks that I do sometimes that helps keep it where it is. And yeah, works quite well. Here I'm just using my all-purpose glue, which works quite well again. And voila, there's that little undersea feel. So it's sort of like the waves and a bit of seaweed and some rocks and all that kind of thing that she gets to sit on as she's looking up towards the surface. So this was from The Little Mermaid. It was an illustrated book of The Little Mermaid. So shame it was in disrepair because it was lovely with the illustrations. But it's nice to honour it in this little collaged journal card for my magical creature. I've been wanting to use the illustrations that were left in it for such a long time, so it was good to have this prompt today that I could do exactly that. Now, I popped her under a few books just to really make sure it sat flat, because once I did the embossing on it, she was curling a little bit. Oh, of course. The actual spread that I'm putting her into, I wanted to do a background on that as well. So I thought, I did watercolour for the journal card, so let's muck about with just some basic acrylic paints. So this is a really quick and easy way to do a background. I use this quite often actually, although I must say it's been ages since I've done this. But I like putting lots of white in, but basically putting the acrylic paint straight onto the paper and then using a palette knife or a bit of cardboard or an old, store loyalty card or credit card kind of thing, and then I just spread it out. So here I'm using a palette knife, and I wanted it to feel kind of oceany, if that makes sense. So I don't know if it translates to that, but I like the look in the end. It's just a lot of fun, mucking about, and you pretty much only need to do that, but I did muck about and add a little bit more. But see how I'm just gently spreading it out. I'm trying not to mix the colours too much. I'm trying to keep some separation in those so that you do get the contrasts and the textures and the different tones. So I did mix it a little bit too much on the right hand side there, but that's okay because that's where I'm going to put the pocket. So I was okay with that going over. And then while the paint's wet, you can actually do all sorts of stuff to it. You can add lines in it. You can press shapes into it. You can even press stamps if you're very careful about how you clean them after. Here I did little circles and they looked like little bubbles almost. What else? And then the other thing, oh yeah, and of course adding some texture with cloths and that sort of thing. So after I've done some little bubbles here and some little circles, which is funny I took so much time because that's going to be behind where the journal card is, but some hatching and that sort of thing. Then I got a piece of rag, which was just something that I've been wiping my hands off, and I just pressed that in and it gave it a bit of roughness so it looked like the foam in the water. And that was pretty much it. Mucking about, playing, really just having fun and not really thinking too much about what it's going to look like in the end. I'm not thinking about composition. I am just playing with what feels right. But before I let it dry completely, sorry, you're probably listening to my son in the background there. Before I let it dry off completely, I did do some splatters over the top because that's always fun. So just watered down the paint a little bit and splattered some white. As I said, just playing, just mucking about. Alrighty, so here I am just gluing together those 3 pieces that I'm doing as the pocket, and I have torn them so that they look like waves, and then that can be the little pocket that the giant journal card can sit in. So see, just gluing them together, and I've torn them so that you get the white edge. It looks a little bit like a wave edge, and then I chop off the bottom to make it nice and straight. So all that's left to do is glue that down on 3 sides, and voila, there's a pocket. It's a little wave pocket. So simple. So finally, since it was such a nice thick piece of art sketch paper, it was like a watercolour paper that I just ripped out of one of my watercolour pads, I just did a really simple border on the back, with the ink. And then what I did also was I'm sanding it down just so that it doesn't stick together. If that doesn't work on the acrylics, because acrylics, if you have opposite pages, they can stick together quite easily. If that doesn't work, I then can put a little bit of either baby powder or corn flour just lightly over it and rub it in, and then that can just help it not stick together as well. But there you are, all done. I'd love it if you could leave me a comment below. Hit the like button if you enjoyed what you saw today. And of course, please subscribe if you haven't already. I will see you next time. And in the meantime, keep creating. Enjoy!